Hey guys, this is Eliot Marshall, former UFC fighter, and this is the Gospel of Fire, where we're going to go through the fire to learn the best way to live our life. So here we are, Gospel of Fire, episode 7, and I have a guest today. My guest is my friend and colleague, professor. That means black belt, Chris Reese. How are you today, Chris?
I'm good, Professor. Good. It's an honor to be on your podcast, by the way.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you coming on. We're going to talk about something today that I find super close to my heart a little bit because, I've had some of these experiences growing up. My dad has had some of these experiences growing up. But before we get into that, tell everyone, we know each other because of Jiu Jitsu. So tell everyone a little bit about your Jiu Jitsu life and then what it is that you do for a living.
Sure. So I've been training Brazilian Jiu Jitsu for 14 years now, all under Easton. I'm a Mall Easton black belt. I'm very proud of that, by the way. I like loyalty. I started jiu-jitsu basically because of my job. Law enforcement. I've been in law enforcement for 21 years. Some of it's been on the street and most of it's been in the jail setting. I teach defensive tactics to law enforcement. I get to do that all over the state and sometimes in other states. So Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was one of those things that I kind of stuck to, it just stuck with me, and I like to bring it to law enforcement. So that's basically why I'm in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, is because of that. And then I just fell in love with the lifestyle.
Yeah, it's a great lifestyle, right? Like it's constantly, as I'm sure working with criminals is, because obviously if you're in the jail, then yeah, you're working with criminals. It's challenging, and it helps keeps things a little quieter in your mind and your real life is how I feel Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is. Would you agree?
I agree 100%. And as far as like the mental health stuff, you talk about the stoicism a lot.
Yeah.
And, that's how you have to be in law enforcement too. You have to be present in the moment. And that's what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu does, at least for me. I can't think about the past or what's going to happen in the future. I have to think about the person that's on top of me trying to make me tap. That's the beauty of it.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So let's dive into it. The reason that I talked to you, I think, was it last week or the week before, about coming on my podcast is because you made a post on Instagram and I reposted it. And the post was very simple and it hits the heart of what I believe almost all of our policing problems that we're having, especially with police and the minority communities are. And it's this: if you are a first responder and you aren't training on a regular basis, you might as well be a last responder because you're going to complicate an already bad situation. Why'd you post that?
I posted that because what we end up doing in law enforcement, and it goes for all of the public, we have two roles in law enforcement. And they're kind of similar. It's a warrior and a guardian, right? We're there to protect and serve the community, right? So that's our job. And mission statements all across the United States will have something similar. We value human life and things like that. Those are important, very important when you're in law enforcement. If you're not training, meaning if you're not getting even not just physical training, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu training, or whatever it is that you do, training in how to talk to people, right? So not everybody's really good at talking to people, right? So we have to get training on that. It could be someone that's having severe mental health issues, and we need to learn how to talk to them. We can't just always go in there and just start shouting at people. And so if you're not training, and you're not getting some kind of stress inoculation, even with like learning how to talk to people, or someone's shouting at you, or train those scenarios and things like that, you are doing a disservice to yourself and the community that you represent. So when it comes to combat training or combat sports or whatever it is, martial arts, you have to train on a regular basis, and that will cause you. It causes you. Someone talked about it recently. The dichotomy of you have to learn. You'll learn to be confident, and you'll also learn to be humble when you train martial arts, especially Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But you can't just do it 3 times a year for 2 hours, right? You're not going to learn anything, really. You're going to learn some techniques, and you're not going to learn how to respond to stress very well. And that's why if you're not training on a regular basis, if you're not learning how to talk to people, if you're not learning martial arts, then you're going to complicate things because you don't know what to do. And you may mean well, but you're not seeing the big picture or what's really happening. And that's important. It's important to me for law enforcement to train in stress. And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, man, that's like the Monday Randoris that I go to. That's stress, man. You're getting put through some stress there. There's a lot of
we have like 15 black belts, right? 15 black belts. Cody Donovan, who's a former UFC fighter. Excuse me, Alex Huddleston, who's just a monster of a human being in a black belt. Like, it's coming, and then let alone just like I think people don't realize that even the black belts that you don't know, right, that aren't famous, these motherfuckers would tie you in knots.
Yeah,
I get tied in knots. I think one of the things you said right there, there's a couple things that I want to touch on. One of them was the last thing you said was you might not be meaning to do that. Like you're not trying to come in and make the situation worse. I don't think anybody is. Like, let's talk about with the situation with let's just be honest. The big situation is minorities and the police right now. This is a huge situation in our country. Would you agree?
I would agree. I agree 100%.
Yeah. In most of the cases, very rare. Okay, so I want to say probably the cop in South Carolina that had the guy running away from him and he blew him away. Okay, that guy might be racist. I don't know, but he might be. But I think in most of the situations, it's not the officer's intent to come in and blow somebody away, but it is what their impact ends up being.
Yeah, and I would agree. And there's one thing that's hard for me in being in my position and
right,
whatnot, is that some of these things that I see and read about, I'm not there, so I don't know exactly all that transpired, right? So
sure.
I don't get we don't, as a public, get all the information right away and things like that. I will tell you, this is one thing that I can tell you. If anybody in law enforcement, goes to prison or, does something illegal, gets caught doing, shady things or whatever, it's usually a character issue. And that's what it comes down to, right? So it's a character issue. But when you're talking about situations rapidly evolving and things like that, you're right. I believe the intent is not to harm or kill somebody. And it just, if you don't have the training and you've never been in a confrontation and you've never been in a verbal confrontation, or you've never been punched in the face, or you've never been had to tap, right, or whatever, you had your arm broken or all those things, you're not going to know how to deal with certain situations, right? So your stress level goes up, you kind of freeze, or you get more aggressive. If we're talking about excessive use of force, the use of force usually is a lack. You go to excessive use of force is a lack of confidence. It's a lack of confidence in what you know, right? So then you up the level, right? Because you're not. It's just like a white belt, right? Things aren't working, you spaz out, right? So you spaz out and you panic, and so that's what I see sometimes, and some, a lot of times it never ends in a in a shooting or someone getting hurt or anything like that. And luckily, sometimes people learn from that and nothing happens, but they learn and they say, okay, maybe I need more training, or maybe I need to get some physical training or something like that. And that's the positive from that, right?
One of the best things I think you said so far is, and I didn't even think about this because I only took your post to mean like learn how to fight, verbal training, right? Because that's where everything starts. Everything starts with the talking. I just ran into this situation last week. I don't know if you heard about it at the school where, I mean, fuck, man, I got into a fight with somebody in the school because, really? Yeah, man. Yeah, because he wanted to jump into a class. Like the way we structure our classes, you can't train right away, right? Like you have to like go through the process of making sure that you're going to take care of somebody else, and that takes some time, but sometimes people come in with some experience, and this guy came in with some experience. So that he said, but his attitude was terrible. Like terrible. Like we deal with this all the time. People coming in saying they have experience. This isn't like it never happens. But the very first question for us is like, what belt do you have? And he's like, we don't do belts, which is just like the number one, like, oh, fuck, you trained in your garage and you learned how to fight, Right. So anyway, the way it went down, man, was like I let the guy come to my advanced class. I probably shouldn't have. And I let him train with some people. It went okay, not great. And then I trained with him. And my goal with training with people is to see if how they win. I mean, not necessarily how they lose. I need to see how you're going to deal with making somebody tap. So I give the guy my arm, and bro, I had to scream tap. I was like, stop, please.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Because my arm was in the process of breaking. Like he was breaking my shoulder. It was a Kimura. And then when he let go, and I gave it to him, right? But I need to see how he's going to handle this. And obviously he handled this fucking terribly.
Yeah.
And then, I was like, motherfucker, what are you doing? Is what I said to him. And he goes, that's how the move's done, pussy.
Oof.
So it didn't go very well for him or me, Right. I beat his ass. But still, that's not very good for me. And then I kicked him out. It was this huge ordeal in the middle of the school. And where it went bad, and like I don't feel bad about what happened in the moment. He deserved everything he got in the beating that I gave him. I didn't hit him, but he deserved every single thing that he got in the moment, and there was no real other way to go after we had gone that route. But where I failed was in the talking beforehand. And that was a huge failure on my part. That was a huge failure on my part. And I have to own that, Yes. And I'm not saying that we're not in the fight business. Man, we're in the fucking fight business. And I talked to the students afterwards, and some of the new students came up to me and said, man, that was the most inspiring thing I've ever seen in my life. That like how I handled it in the moment. And I won't disagree that it was the right way to handle in the moment, but that is not what we're trying to do with our academies, Right. And I think when you take that to law enforcement, you guys are not going around trying to shoot people.
No, we're not. And some of the most inspiring police officers or law enforcement people I've been around in my long career there are the people that have this gift of gab. They can talk to anybody at any time, any race, any religion, anybody, right? And they can, even if they're not complying, they can get them to comply just by talking to them. There's something about certain people that you can just see it, and it inspires me. I'm like, wow, that he has a lot of patience, or she has a lot of patience, but she got the job done, and there's no one got hurt. Isn't that kind of like what society is, though? I mean, this is my opinion. We've kind of forgotten how to talk to each other.
We don't.
We just don't
because
talk.
We don't.
Yep.
I mean, how many of your neighbors do? I mean, like, and I'm not asking you personally, all of us. How many of our neighbors do you know? Like when a weird car drive, when like I grew up in a time when, like, when we were all outside playing football or basketball or baseball, whatever we were doing out in the woods or in the streets as kids, like if a car drove down the street, that you didn't like notice because everyone like stopped and looked and was like, whoa, 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 who's that?
Right.
You know? And but that was like a way of keeping ourselves safe because we all knew who people were, you know? And we just got away from that, you know? We just got away from that. And I think that's one of the huge reasons that all of this is happening is we don't connect with each other. We don't know how to talk to anybody. And I'm so glad that you brought up the verbal training, because that's where it all starts. It all starts, like everyone thinks that this problem is just a police problem. No, it's a society problem. It's an all of us problem that we can't sit back and say, what's up, man? What's going on today?
This goes back to that post and the training part, right? So what makes a good officer is, whether it's in a jail or on the street, is experience, right? So you gain a lot of experience through trauma, through critical incidents, just dealing with people. It's a human being profession. That's what it is. You're dealing with human beings all day, all shift long, right? That's just how it is. And with that, with the verbal training, it comes as the most important part. But when you do when you have new officers come in, what's the gap to try to get them experience, right? Because you're going to get it out on the job, but to get them experience is through training. So training is most important because it kind of tries to bring them up to speed as best you can to the experienced officer, right? And nothing will replace actual experiences, but the training will give you a guide on how to do that. That's why Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to me is so important, because if you can get through open mat or class, and you're breathing hard and you're slapping hands with people, you're learning respect, you're learning confidence, you're learning being humble, and that translates into the verbal aspect of policing, right? So you have all those things. So you can tell when someone has a lot of training. You can tell when someone's training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I've been told this before. You can tell that I've had some kind of training. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling, they look at the ears and they assume that. and it's the confidence, though, that you show when you're talking to somebody, right? You're being humble. You're showing respect. You're confident. They'll give you respect, right? They'll give you respect back, and then you can get things accomplished. But you add Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to the verbal training, whatever it is, and, man, you have a solid police officer. That's just my opinion. Solid.
I think it's because when you fight every day, as we do with Jiu-Jitsu, you're trying to win. There's never a time that you're trying to lose, right? And you still lose. So you realize how bad things can actually go.
Right.
Even when, like, look, I'm trying to armbar you. I'm going to try to hit this move. And then the next thing I know, I'm not armbarring you, man. You're armbarring me. Right. So it's not this like, oh, I'm the baddest in the world. It's the, oh shit, this goes ugly most of the time. This goes terrible most of the time. Like when you look at a success rate per move that you attempt, it's probably worse than baseball. Right?
Yeah.
Like in baseball, you end if you bat 300, which is failing 70% of the time, you're a Hall of Famer. Right? You're a Hall of Famer. I think the percentage is worse in jiu-jitsu. I think I'm successful at like maybe 15 to 20% of the things that I try. So you just are so aware of the bad parts that this all goes down with. So you do in my real life, I do everything I can to not be there because, dude, when I was in this altercation last week on Thursday, man, I was scared shitless.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
This guy was as big as me, and we were already there, and I was just like, fuck, man. Like, this can just go so poorly.
Yep.
You know? And that's a lot of that is where, you know, that's what I talked about with my staff the next day. That's what I talked about with everyone, is like how much I failed this, because it can just go so bad. And I think the reaction, especially getting back to police now, the good ones, as you say, they don't pull their guns out even when they get punched in the face.
Right.
That, but for a lot of people who don't know how to train,
right,
who don't train, that I'm not going to discredit the fact that they feel in danger of their life when they get punched in the face,
right,
or somebody screams at them. I can't tell you that how they feel is wrong, but what I can say is that you feel that way because you have a lack of ability, and you haven't put yourself in the fire, on
right,
a consistent enough basis that you don't feel that way.
And that is exactly what I've heard throughout my career is what you just said. That last comment is, have you been put through the fire yet? Right. That is one of those things where you don't. I think it was maybe on another. I was reading something, and someone was talking about it's so much better to have to fail in training than it is to fail in an actual situation, right? I mean, you're going to have failures all the time, but when you're in training and you're training jiu-jitsu, right? And I fail way more than I succeed, and that's a fact, and that's just the way jiu-jitsu is. And
that's a fact for Buchecha and Hajer too, who are like the best ever. That's their fact as well.
And I fail, and I'd rather fail in training. So meaning I tried something, I thought maybe this might work, and it didn't work, and I just got my soul crushed. I'd rather have that happen in training and understanding where the failure came from than actually having it happen to me when a real life situation is happening, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the beauty of, again, that's the beauty of jiu-jitsu. You're going to fail, and when you fail, and then you can try to fix it. You can try to fix it. You can think of something, try something different the next time, right? It's like when I was a white belt and I kept trying to pass the guard, and I always stuck my arm down there to pass the guard, and I get triangle. And I get triangle like 80 times, right? And then I finally figured out, don't put your arm there, right? So I'd rather have that fail there than have it fail out there when I need it the most. And going back to what you were talking about with the guy that came into your school, that's what leadership is, right? You went and taught, you understood what was going on, and you talked to your people, and that's leadership. That's what comes to people that teach officers how to defend themselves, right? And put themselves, it's a leadership thing. The better you are at owning things and understanding your failures and your weaknesses, as you spoke about your last podcast, you understand those and you can say those out loud. People respect that, and they'll listen to whoever's up there trying to teach them stuff instead of blowing you off like, oh, what has he been put through the fire? Because that's the criticism most people get.
So I listened to a lot of Jocko, and I read. I'm on my second time through with Extreme Ownership, and what he said when he was talking about that blue on blue situation, right? And he's and he was barely there. It sounded like, especially listening to it the second time, he just got there at the end,
right?
But when it came time for the blame. It's his, because he's the leader.
Right.
He was in charge of everyone. So not only, getting to my situation, not only am I the leader, but I'm the leader and I'm the one in the situation. So I totally blew that. But, taking ownership for what it is that we do is the number one thing that's the only way to go through life. Is I get none of the credit and all of the blame. And as long as I can keep that in my mind, I think I do a much better job.
Right. That I agree with that. And ownership in law enforcement is extremely important, especially when you're at a supervisory level or whatnot. That's why Jocko's book is perfect for that. But owning it, and you give your people the credit. They take the credit, man. That's what happens. And then you foster, you take on the blame, and then, it never works and while it doesn't work in life in general, but it never works in business if you're constantly blaming everything, everybody, situations, things like that. You just got to own it. I agree.
And nobody wants to hear how great you are.
Exactly.
Like,
no one does.
No one does. Like, all you have to do is be great, and everyone will know. Like, you don't tell people how great you are. No, who's the greatest quarterback ever? Tom Brady? I dislike him, but whatever. Let's say, I dislike him as a player. I don't even know him as a person, so I try not to judge in that sense, right? But like, do you think Tom Brady walks up to people, "Hi, Tom Brady, best quarterback of all time"? No. He just says, "Hi, Tom Brady," and then everyone else goes, "Oh shit, you're the best of all time."
Right.
You don't have to tell people.
Right.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Professor.
No, I was gonna leave the point. So if you were gonna say something, go ahead.
It's the same thing. That's why it was kind of hard for me to come onto your podcast, is because I don't particularly like any attention. You know what I mean? I like to get my point across about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and be a champion of that for law enforcement and training for law enforcement. But it's hard because I'd like to just have other people kind of take up, like the Easton school. They have so many good jiu-jitsu people and world champions and all that stuff. And I just like to watch those people succeed and like everybody succeed. And it's kind of like not to bring attention to myself. I understand that.
Yeah, but I think, that it's what for me, it's I don't follow a lot of people on my social media. But for me, you are one of the people that I follow because you go about your life in a way that I do appreciate, and that I do try to look at. Like we all need people, even like so you're looking at me saying that, and I'm looking at you saying that, but that's what we've got to be doing.
Yes,
that's what we've got to be doing for everyone, and understanding that we don't have all the answers. And we need this constant training, and we need different viewpoints. And this is going to lead into my second point that we were talking about with the training thing, is a lot of times people go, "Oh, I trained. I did the training." And the last time I checked, what makes me really understand and appreciate everything is that I keep doing the training. It's not this ending thing. It's what you said in the beginning. You can't take a 3-hour seminar twice, 2 or 3 times a year. Women come in all the time and ask, "Do you have self-defense classes?" And I'm like, 100%. They're like, "Oh, when's the self-defense seminar?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's every night at 6 o'clock."
Yeah. That's something that drives me crazy, right? I don't mind doing like a self-defense seminar for women, but only with the caveat, like, here we go. Let's get people signed up for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I don't mind showing that to them, but that's right. This is the problem, right? We think we go to a self-defense seminar, men or women, and we're like, okay, now we can take on the world. And it's not that case. You have to constantly keep your skills up, keep your training up, whatever it is that you're doing. You have to do that. You have to come.
Because you have to know where it goes poorly.
Yeah, that's
right?
it.
And you might do the move 1,000 times, and then this new person comes in and does this one little thing differently, and it goes poorly in this whole other way that you never even saw before, and you were like, "God damn."
Yeah.
God damn. Okay, I got to be aware of that too.
It's like
I got to be aware of that too.
Right. It's like with the leg lock game when it started coming in, I was like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
And I had to figure that out. I literally spent hours and hours and hours in training just to try to figure out what everybody was doing, because I needed to know.
And look, you're not going to leg lock anybody in like if some guy in jail attacks you, you're not going to leg lock him. This has no real meaning in your life. Right? We're gonna enter in with an inside Senkaku, and then we're gonna transfer that to the outside. The grip has to. Man, it's you people get too wrapped up in the actual thing. right? It's not the thing, it's the process.
Yes.
It's the process of understanding that you have to constantly be gaining knowledge. You have to constantly be training. You have to constantly be assessing what it is and how it is that you're going about and doing your life.
That's it. That's it. The process. I think you talk. I'm going to quote you totally wrong here, but you ended class one time about we don't teach you moves, or we don't teach you moves. You know, it's the process that we're teaching. You know, the big picture, right? I can teach moves all day long to law enforcement. I can just go, hey, you just do this and this and that. And then when it actually fails out on the street, they're going to say, well, it didn't work. And it's because it's my fault, because I just taught you a move. You know, right. I didn't teach you the process. And so that's a very good point there.
And when we do, we get same thing in life, you know, and I think it's the same thing with jiu-jitsu. When you teach somebody a move, they go all in on that move. Like, this is how it's done, go, right? And then it doesn't work. Like we just said, it doesn't work. Most of the time, it doesn't work. So then what do? They stop, and then they go try another move. And most likely that move won't work either. Right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So this is something that I'm just going to bring up a quick story about you.
Yeah, please.
This is years ago. I think I just got my blue belt, and I was you were teaching closed guard and passing, and we had to go live, and I was with Professor Andrew Detter, and I was trying to pass his guard, and then finally I just stopped, and then he was like, and I was like just holding his hips, and you came up behind me, you scared the crap out of me, and you said, stop effing stalling, Chris. Get something done. You know, and I was like, oh. And every time I'm in closed guard, to this day, I think about your voice. If I'm stalling, I think about you yelling at me. And that's the process, right? Because it wasn't, whatever you taught I wasn't doing it right, or I just wasn't making the connection, and I just gave up, right? I just gave up and just kind of stalled, and you wouldn't let me. You just yelled at me, and I remember that day, and to this day. So you get that.
Thanks. I don't remember it, but thank you. We all have those stories about somebody else, you know.
Right.
So,
right.
And sometimes you just have to do something very little. You just have to get it going, right? Get it going. You know, I think I go back and forth on this person, Jordan Peterson. I think I've said that before, but there are some things that I do say some things that he says that I do really like. And one of them is aim low. Like when things are going poorly, aim really low, you know, and he talks about this more in your life, you know, when you're racked with anxiety and depression, just make your bed. Just do one thing positive every day until you can do that without, you know. And I think maybe in law enforcement, you tell me, when things are going poorly in a conversation, don't try to fix the whole thing. Yeah. Right? Just see if you can get the person to acknowledge the fact that we're just going to sit down for a second. I'm going to sit down. Can you sit down? Or I don't know how it goes, but just something like that. Have a very, very small goal of what you want out of the situation, and then just keep getting just a little better in each moment.
Oh, and that's exactly right. So in the setting I work in, if someone's really upset with me or is being difficult, I'll pull them out, you know, and I'll talk to them one-on-one. Sit down at a table in the chair. We'll sit down and we'll chat about what's going on. And you know what? You're going to find with people, just people in general, that there's something going on. You know, like maybe they got a bad phone call, or maybe someone in their family passed away, or maybe their wife is divorcing. I don't know, something. You'll find that out. And but if you're having a conversation, right, you're aiming low. You're trying to start digging a little bit about what's happening, but you're taking it step by step instead of just coming at them and going, "What the heck is your problem?" Right?
Sit down, get in your block, get in your spot. You know,
that never works.
Yeah.
It doesn't work because it's gonna be conflict. Now there are times where you have to be forceful, and you have to be direct, and you have to tell people this is how it's going to be. But you got to be able to, and that's where the training comes in. You have to be able to see what's happening, right? It's one of those things, like if someone puts their hands up and stands there and says, come get some, and they're not moving towards you, and you're standing there. If I move towards him, I'll be causing something physical to happen, right?
You escalated. He asked you to escalate, but he didn't escalate. You then escalated by moving towards him.
Right. So if I just stand my ground, he stands his ground, then maybe we can have a conversation as to why you're acting like that, right? And if he moves towards, puts his hands up and moves towards me, then I'm going to take that as a threat, and I'm going to have to deal with that issue. But if he's just there, a lot of times guys and gals in life, even people that are having, maybe they're criminals or whatever, however you want to call them, they don't know, they're scared too, like maybe this is their defense mechanism as well. And not all of them, but sometimes that's what it is, man. This is their defense mechanism. They don't want to talk anymore, so they're just going to put their hands up and say, I'm done, right? But you have to be able to see that, and that's where the training comes in. And, and the people that I've worked with over the years, man, there have been some really good people and really good leadership, and they try really hard, and I just wish that I could get everybody on board with the jiu-jitsu. I think it would just make them even better people, I guess, for lack of a better word there.
I think my experience, and we have some, I don't want everyone to take this, negatively. We have some great cops that train with us, Alistair, we have some great cops in Denver, at all of the schools that train with us. But my experience most of the time is I feel that the police officers that don't train and that have never trained, exposing their weakness they feel that it stays pretty hidden, that it doesn't come up very often. And if a normal, dorky looking guy, I love Shay, but he does some dorky stuff, right? Like, but if a guy like Shay can tie them in knots, who's like 100 and nothing with long, beautiful locks of hair. If somebody like him who doesn't even wear shoes, he wears those little things on his feet, whatever they are, right? If somebody like that can tie them in knots, man, that can cause some panic in somebody's life. Man, I'm dealing with way worse people in the street. So I think it can make him go the other way. Like, okay, I'll be fine. I'll just pull my gun out. You know?
Well, yeah, or start do that, or start doing something else that is maybe excessive, or that it's fine if I roll with other cops, right? I train with them or whatever, they're fine with me beating them up, right? Because I'm another cop, right? But that's why I brought Amal into some of our trainings, right? So they could see, because one time we trained the SWAT team, and I asked them all to come, right? Come, they had to fight out a mount for 2 or 3 minutes. That was part of the training, right? And he's like, sure, I'll be there. He shows up in a baggy t-shirt and some board shorts and some flip-flops, right? And all these people that don't know him are like, who in the heck is this guy, right?
Okay, yeah, oh yeah. Amal can bring it right, bro. Right. Amal can bring it right.
He shows up with the t-shirts and the baggy t-shirt, the board shorts, the flip-flops, right, to our training. And all those guys were like, who is this guy, And I'm like, you're about to find out. And so he get in top of mount, and they had to fight out for, I think, 3 minutes. And he wasn't even sweating, he's just like laying on top of them, and they're trying to like push his face away and all that stuff. And it was a good eye-opening experience because it came from somebody that they didn't know, right? That's not law enforcement. And that doesn't look
terrible. Come on, man. Amal looks like a fucking hippie. Love him, right? I love him, but he looks like a hippie half the time.
He does. But man, he'll bring it. Like you said, he'll bring it. And so that was important for those to understand, like, no, and then they're failing, and it was set up for them to fail, right? I mean, they don't. Of course. I think the only thing they've learned right now at that time was like the buck and roll, and me and Amal, we know how to defend that, right? So we're just sitting on top of Mount, and it was good for them to understand how that felt, that feeling of panic, helplessness, and it's happening in training. And I actually got some people to sign up because of that. Amal did, and just to sign up and train. There's some that I work with that are training on a regular basis.
It's amazing.
In Boulder, and
good.
And that's what I want. That's my goal. Like I said in my post, before I retire, I want every single law enforcement officer to learn jiu-jitsu, but in the right way. Like suffer. You got to suffer. You got to suffer a little bit, and you got to understand what that is, so you're a better person when you're dealing with people. That's it right there.
Man, I think that's a great spot to end. You want every single law enforcement officer to get into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And we're not. This isn't like this. Look, this isn't a plug for our schools in Colorado. After fighting every day, Fight Club got this right. Everything else gets the volume turned down. You don't need to fight. You become aware of how bad it can go, because it goes bad for you every day. It goes bad for me every day. If you're not in law enforcement, man, or even again, back to law enforcement, you aren't. Look, just when your overall stress comes down, we all as human beings handle situations better that way. Most Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu schools are also such a great community. You find great people that you would never think that you would interact with and have something in common with, and now you do. You start talking to each other again. All the topics that we've hit on here, I mean, I think you agree the same. Outside of my children, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the greatest thing that I've been able to do for my life. It makes me a better father, a better husband, a better everything. So, I think that was a great place to say thank you to you, Chris, for everything that you do. The leadership that you show me, I know you probably don't see it that way, but I do. So I just want to say thanks, man.
Man, I appreciate that, and thank you. That's an honor to hear that from you. I appreciate that.
Everyone's leading somebody. Everyone's you're either bringing them up or bringing them down. So make the choice, guys. Which one do you want it to be? Again, Chris, I appreciate everything you do in our bigger community and in our smaller community of Easton. So thanks a lot, man.
Thank you too.
All right, guys, have a great day. Thanks for listening to The Gospel. Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode of The Gospel of Fire. Hit me up on my social media at FireMarshal205 on both Twitter and Instagram. Give me a follow at my fan page on Facebook, Eliot the Fire Marshal. Give a subscribe on iTunes, on Stitcher, wherever you're listening. Throw a review up there. We'd greatly appreciate it. We'll see you on the next episode.